Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Good afternoon, and thank you so much for your patience today. My name is Erin Dorn. I'm the Adult Education and Art Access Coordinator here at the Crocker Art Museum, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to today's program, which we're calling Artist to Artist, Raimonds Staprans in conversation with Squeak Carnwath. We are delighted to have these two artists with us today to talk about and celebrate the work of Raimonds Staprans, whose work is currently on view in our second floor galleries. And this exhibition, Full Spectrum, Paintings by Raimonds Staprans, is open through October 8th. So as I always tell people, this is a show that really rewards additional viewings. So even if you've already seen it, I see some heads nodding. If you've already seen it, I do encourage you to, again today, go back, take another look, and if you can, come back before it closes on October 8th. I also want to make sure you know that today is the closing day of the exhibition Turn the Page, the first 10 years of High Fructose. This show is located on our third floor gallery, and it is a wide-ranging exhibition of contemporary art from the last 12 years, and it's all works that were featured in the Bay Area-based contemporary art magazine, High Fructose. If you haven't seen it yet, please do yourself a favor and go up and look at it before it is gone forever, because it is the closing day, and the Crocker is the last stop for this touring show. So I hope you'll hit Raymond's show and hit High Fructose on our third floor as well. And at this point, I want to ask everyone to turn off any cell phones or electronic devices. And it now gives me great pleasure to introduce our two incredible guests today. Squeak Carnwath draws upon philosophical and mundane experiences of daily life in her paintings and prints. She has received numerous awards, including the Sika Award from the SF MoMA, 2 individual artist fellowships from the NEA, and a Guggenheim Fellowship. Carnwath is Professor Emerita at UC Berkeley and a founding member and current president of the Artist Legacy Foundation. She lives and works in Oakland. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Squeak Carnwath.
Thank you.
And I now do want to introduce Raimonds Staprans. Raimonds Staprans immigrated to the United States from his native Latvia in 1947, fleeing civil unrest that followed in the wake of World War II. Staprans began his formal art education at the University of Washington before relocating to the University of California, Berkeley. In addition to being a critically acclaimed visual artist, Staprans is an award-winning playwright, and his 1989 play, 4 Days in June, which depicts the real-life events of the Soviet occupation of Latvia in 1940, has garnered multiple awards, and this I didn't know. It is credited with playing an integral role in the Latvian pro-democracy movement following the fall of the Soviet Union in the early 90s. That's right. That's amazing.
Maybe he has some advice for us now.
Staprans' work is exhibited and collected by many prominent artistic institutions, both domestically and abroad, including the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, San Francisco's DeYoung Museum, and the Portland Art Museum. Raimonds Staprans currently lives and works in San Francisco with his wife, Ilana Staprans. So please join me in welcoming these wonderful guests for an enlightening conversation. And now I turn it over to Squeak.
Pardon? Oh, start. Do we have to have that light in our eyes? Oh, okay. It's a big drag. Okay, I'm going to turn this way.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to give a little thing before about painting. And Raimonds probably already knows this story, but I think painting, I have 2 stories about painting, is really the first conceptual art because you're putting information basically dirt on a flat surface, and it's not a three-dimensional thing. It's not something you can walk into. You can only look at it and, I suppose, feel it. And but we tend to believe that there's a truth on that flat surface, and I think that's a really fascinating aspect of painting. And there's a story, I think it's a Pliny story, or Pliny, I don't know, Pliny. And there was a painting contest, and there were two painters. Do you know this story?
No, I
Oh,
don't.
I bet you do. And
Maybe.
one painter, they were trying to see who the best painter was. And the first painter painted a beautiful bowl of fruit, grapes on it, and a bird came in and tried to pluck the grapes because it was so believable. The other painter, his work came out, and there was a curtain across it, and someone came to move the curtain to see what his painting was, and it was painted, and he couldn't move. He couldn't move the curtain. And then the other story is, I think Courbet, Gustave Courbet, was one of the first conceptual artists, and he made a painting called The Origin of the World, which I'm kind of use bad shorthand. But it was basically a crotch shot of a woman. And it's a very small, intimate painting. It's like this size. And it was made because there wasn't a Playboy magazine and there weren't porno movies. And a man named Bey, who, B-E-Y, was a Turkish collector, and he had it made for him. And Courbet also made a cover painting, a painting that hid this secret pleasure for this collector. And the painting that he made to cover this woman, it was really just one part of her body. Oh, I just thought of something about Trump. Anyhow. In any case, so the cover painting was fit right over it, and it was a painting of a church, or it was a building that had a cross on it. It was really a large house or a chateau or something, and it was in the snow. So you have like interior, exterior, hot, cold, figure, and something that can live in that, in a place for that figure to go. So that's like the second conceptual thing I was thinking of. Anyhow, so that's just to start us out, and you all know the history, I guess. Did you all go upstairs? Okay, good. So when did you start getting interested? Now we're going to just move to the questions for Raymond. When did you start getting interested in artwork, making art?
Actually, I'm not really sure that I'm making art at this moment.
Oh,
at
okay.
this stage of the game.
I think people would disagree.
There are always doubts. And I think it will be for others to say it. And so I would say probably what you meant is when did I start painting or drawing?
Yes.
I would say at the age of 4.
Wow.
And at the age of 4, because I was living in an apartment in Latvia, and across the street there was a mortuary. And I would say that every time they took some people out. And so I asked my dad, who's a doctor, I says, so what happens to the people when they come in? Do they all go out this door? And he says, no, just a few of them. And I started to draw those people and the funeral processions and whatever. And everybody said, what a morose child. But I really, at that time, I really wasn't morose at all. But so I would say that's probably my career, what you would say.
Began there.
Began,
Yeah.
yes. And But let me tell you right away, my drawings were just as good or just as bad or very similar as people draw at that age. You know, I would say children at that age, is there 4 to 5, all over the world, they draw the same. The drawings look the same.
It's
and
changed.
Mine looked the same also. Nobody said that there was any kind of an amount of talent or anything like it.
Did you use color then? Did you have
Color
paints?
them, yes. I had colored pencils too. I had them, but I usually broke them. So after, when I was given a sort of box of colored pencils, then after, I would say about a week, only a few colors were left broken. And I didn't know how to sharpen them at the moment. And, so I ended up with black and white drawings, yes.
And I'm going to, I don't have any order to my questions, so I'm going to jump around. You've said that your work, your visual art, is purely Californian.
My work is Californian. Well, that's, I would say, a question. Yeah, those questions has been asked to me. Probably, but I always maintain that painting and art, it is kind of a universal, and it's really difficult to put it in a specific time, in a specific location. Mm-hmm. At least that's my personal opinion, and most people object to it.
But
even my best friend.
Even though you said it's purely Californian.
Yes.
It was quoted in the catalog.
I had to mention something. I've been painting in California. I've been influenced. Yeah, you got me, my sister. And I am influenced probably by the light and surroundings, not as much by the painters as by the air around it. And I think I've already written about it quite a lot. That when you live in San Francisco, the colors, what do you see? It's mostly the fog, the white and blue skies, and white houses. Mm-hmm. That's about it, blue and white and sunlight. And I think I've been really influenced by that, mm-hmm. quite a lot. By the painters, if there's such a school as a California painting, I'm not sure about it. I'm not sure at all.
So when I was reading the catalog, Raimonds is a very well-known playwright in Latvia. And the description of one of your plays, or a line, Nancy Princenthal in the catalog essay mentions the only thing I know about the plays, which is that the wife in this particular play asks the husband, I may be getting this wrong, but to castrate himself using their wedding rings, something like that. And that's a much harsher kind of, your paintings are much, they're not like that. Like if you think of that line and then you think of your paintings, they don't go together in my head. So I was thinking that you have one foot in Latvia that is one identity, just a playwright, and the kinds of things you write about that I think are tied also to the work in the 70s, the figurative work and the Angry Birds, and that you have another foot in California, which in the Bay Area, which looks a certain way, has kind of light and a different life. And so are there two Staprans?
Yes. I think that's a very good answer, I would say. And Well, I would say, I always say that I really live a double life. Like when I'm here, I consider myself by conviction 100% American. And when I go to Latvia, I'm a Latvian. And my thinking and attitudes change completely. They are different. And
Okay, I have another question that's sort of tied to this. So you write in Latvian
yes.
all the time when you write, or only the plays?
Yes, I write, well, probably I've written probably a couple of articles or so. But I write only plays, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I do.
And when you dream, what language do you dream in?
I really don't know. I've never. This question has been asked me before, and I can't give you a good answer. I just dream.
Okay.
But also, quite recently, that I had a really a dream that lasted a long, long time, and I was speaking in German.
Because he speaks 4 languages.
Yeah. And the thing it is that I spoke German when I was really young and fairly well, I would say, better than English and now. And then I forgot all about it, and I can't speak it now. And all of a sudden in this dream, I was so fluent in it. So that's the only time I remember a certain language. Otherwise, I don't know why.
Okay, so my next question is, so what language do you paint in?
Yeah, well, I would say that's really a loaded question, very loaded.
We have a lot of time.
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff. That's loaded. I know you're trying to get me. That's true, yeah. When I paint, I would say I have been influenced by some California painters, yes.
So that language of light.
Yeah, that language of light and the way they have seen it, and I would say for me, a painter I usually say the painter is like a scavenger. They take from here to there what suits him, any kind of a junk, or sometimes it's good things. And I've been influenced by some of the Bay Area painters, which I esteem very, very highly. And I should I mention them or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've written it down because I have a terrible mechanical memory, and it's getting even worse now. And I would say Richard Diebenkorn, Nat Oliveira, and Manuel Neri. Those 3 people I think esteem really. And I think I've been really influenced by them quite a lot, personally, even if it doesn't look it. Do you want me to expand on one of the stories?
Yeah.
Well, it is like a joke. 10 years ago, this question was asked: which California painters do you like? And I said, Richard Diebenkorn, and then I forgot the rest of them. And somewhere in my voice, and I think somebody, it must have been my wife, said, it's not Oliveira. And I see everyone cringed. There was a TV team and people, and they had to cut out that entire section of what they meant about 3 or 4 minutes just because somebody
Yelled?
Yeah, gave me, I would say, corrected me and helped me along the way. So it never showed up in the program.
Well, like in the figurative work that's in, I guess, the 70s, from like mid-70s to 80, where you did the Angry Birds and the figurative work,
Yes.
the females, that I think of, that reminds me a little of Manuel Neris and of Oliveira.
Yeah.
Or Fritz Scholder, who also studied with Thibaut.
Yeah.
Or even a little bit, well, no, not at all, actually, but I was thinking of Mel Ramos, but that would be more the pop, the sort of halation that happens around objects and stuff that's in more recent work. So that must be something that was going around. I mean, it's like it either was a zeitgeist, the way that people saw the light or felt the light in California, Northern California, because it's different than in Southern California. It's a little brighter or something, a little whiter. And that they could see, well, if you look at something long enough, you see, and it has a color, the color pops off the edge of something in certain light. And if you really pay attention, you can see that. Or if you take a white piece of paper and you hold something red next to it, that red will reflect on the paper. So if people are sensitive, they could see that around objects as well, I think. I mean, do you see that around things, or is that just in painting? It just occurred to me to ask that question.
Could you put it in a simpler question, if you would?
Oh, a simple question. Do you see, when you look at, do you set up still lifes in advance, or are they all from your head?
I don't think I could answer that.
Oh, you can't answer whether you set up a still life or not? Like, do you put things on a table and look at them and look at the shadow and?
Yes, yes.
Or is it all from your imagination?
No, you look at the shadow, but and you see it. But for me, it's mostly imagination. I would say it's mostly imagination, and I've done a lot of realistic work, and I enjoy it. But now, when I paint it, I think it's imagination. Yeah.
Because of experience.
It's the way I would like to see it, not the way it exactly
is. Oh, yeah.
It is, yeah. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you kind of did. Well, there was another thing you said about the paintings that are from the 80s to now, is that they, I think this is in the catalog too, that they are, the way I would word it is a pathway to happiness, or that they they make you happy, or they are about acquiring happiness.
Well,
Not happy.
I think my wife should answer that question. That one would say that on the outside, I don't seem to be a happy person as such, and a lot of people say that. For example, I don't know really how to smile.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Or how to laugh. And I don't really know how to appreciate comedy also. So
really?
I would say by nature I'm a little bit of a somber person, yes. And
but do the paintings, do you get joy from them, or you feel happiness when you're doing them at least?
I would say
they save you?
Considering all of the human conditions and situations I've been in, I am the most happy person when I am painting at this moment.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately it's true. It's not any people or any friends, or is it a love or something else. when I'm painting, I'm happy. When I stop painting, I'm somber again.
Yeah. There's nothing like being alone with the paint.
Yeah, there's nothing, and it isn't always appreciated, okay, I would say that's all I would.
Okay, done with that. Okay.
Yeah, we're done with that question, definitely.
Do you consider your work accessible?
Accessible?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, I would say so. And for that reason that people have bought my work, so I think it should be accessible, and I hate to brag it, but I've sold a lot of paintings in my lifetime, so I must have been quite accessible.
But I'm not thinking about the marketplace so much as that they reach people, that they speak to people. And do you want
them? They speak to people.
Do you want them to want the paintings to be able to do that, or?
Yes.
I mean, color alone is.
What I want them to speak to me first.
First, absolutely, yeah.
And ultimately, if they speak to me, I'm not concerned so much whether other people feel the same way or not. Also, one should
I bet that's. I don't believe you.
All right. Yes.
So there's a fabulous Louise Bourgeois sculpture that it's marble, and I forget what the carved part is. It might be hands or something, but it's on a cylinder kind of shape, and it says in French, "Love me, love me, love me," on it, which I think most artists really, that's like a sentiment that you could say most artists are kind of after, that there is a form of loving what you do and having it be loved back, which means that you are then loved in some way.
Yes. Now I can give you an explanation here. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel it that much in a painting, but definitely I feel it when I write. And that's an entirely different thing. When you write, you are dependent upon the audience because the audience is part of it. And all the time you have to think whether it will be accepted by the audience, whether they will understand it, whether they will like it. And then it has nothing to do whether I like it or not. I always have to think whether the audience likes it. And so I would say that's where I get my rewards. But with a painting, I can say really that it has to please me.
Right.
Primarily. And even if it pleases everybody else, and if it doesn't please me, it really bothers me very much. And so I think I'm the judge of it. So it's a very personal thing that goes, I would say.
So
it's a part of my nature.
So in the writing, you don't work the same way as when you paint?
No, it's an entirely different approach. It's audience-directed approach. And
do you think David Mamet writes that way?
Pardon me?
Do you think David Mamet writes that way? I'm curious. I mean, I have no idea. I'm just, throwing him out because he's a playwright.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Actually, I have met him and I have not spoken and asked this question. Other playwrights. No, but I think as much as I know, the few playwrights I do know, they all are concerned and mortified by this, and they really suffer, and I suffer, that at the intermission maybe half of the audience walk out, and they do.
Yeah. Which also happens when people look at artwork.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, more or less.
Yeah,
you know.
probably, but
You don't notice it as
yeah,
much.
it's really not noticeable. But when you, I would say, you write a play and then you really give your heart out, your heart bleeds. And then you see someone in the first row says, yawns and just walks out. And I would say for a playwright, it's very, very distressing.
Yeah. Huh.
But with a painting, it's not quite as noticeable, yeah. And
Well, that's what I actually like about making artwork, is that you can, that you are doing, I feel like you do it for yourself, and that the artist has to be the first person that's pleased, and that it's something that when we're done with the painting, it has to exist on its own. And we can't control who likes it or doesn't like it. In fact, I never believe anybody likes anything. Because I think that's, personally, I think that's dangerous.
Yes.
Because then I might listen to them.
Yes.
I don't want to do that. Okay, let's see, what else do I have here? Do you have a question?
No.
Okay.
No.
Oh, another thing you said, and I find this hard to believe too, is that the act of painting the paint, overrides any symbolism that an object might have. That the symbolism of, like, the angry bird or the figure or a box or a landscape doesn't matter. It's just the paint.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and the subject matter isn't really all of that important. It's what you do with it. It's important, I would say, mostly. And I would say that in my work, I consider it an abstraction, and the subject is, and I think mostly it was said by the late art critic of the San Francisco Chronicle, Alfred Frankenstein, and he said, well, when I looked at your work, it's really mostly abstraction, but then you throw some subject in, some subject matter, like you throw a dog some meat. Mm-hmm. I think I'm quoting him pretty closely, and that's what I do. And
throw out meat.
For me, it's also the subject matter. It's also a piece of meat. It's, for me, it's important. Like, for example, you make a round orange circle. It's just an abstract circle. But if I make it look a little bit like an orange or a peach or something, it even means more to me, because I've done two things at the same time, and it's made an abstract painting, and I made a sort of like a representational work, and there is a peach and there is abstraction. And I don't know, I would say that's not a very clear explanation, but I have to think about it.
Don't you think there's abstraction in everything? In, like, Rembrandt or realist painters as well? I mean, it's like, if you deconstruct even something that's that appears like photographic almost, it's still, because it's painted and touched on the surface all over,
yes.
has areas of abstraction.
Yes, yes.
I mean, you're just sort of blowing that up in a way, making it more.
I would say there's.
You're weighting it more in the abstraction.
There's an abstraction in every painting, I would say, even the most realistic one.
Exactly.
Even in better photorealist
Yeah,
painters,
exactly.
there is an abstraction. And,
Yeah, yeah.
and when you really analyze it, and I know, like, it was about 2 years ago, and I was at the Bohemian Club and showed some 19th century paintings, and I was told, well, that's really a realism. And I said, how could be a realism when you really pay some attention? The sun shines from the left side, but the shadows go towards the right side. And I would really suggest for everyone in the audience to try to make this test. Take a very realistic, for example, 19th century or even earlier painting, and then look at it very closely, how the shadows go. And then you would realize that they do abstractions.
Okay. All right, let's see. So I think I answered that question. Oh, you said that in your catalog, which I spent time reading, because I didn't know anything about you. And you talked a lot to some other people, so I found out things in the catalog. So you said that you learned more about drawing from, you took a class at University of Washington in Seattle, a sculpture class from Archipenko.
Yes.
And that you learned more about drawing in that class than two-dimensional classes or drawing classes. Is it drawing a blank? Do you know why, or can you say? Do you have an opinion why? Do you?
How do you relate to when painting with?
Like how? Yeah, why would somebody learn more drawing in a sculpture class than in say, a life drawing class?
I don't know. I may have said it, but I'm not sure now. I'm not sure now
what you meant.
Now I would have to give it a
because see, this is an
I
important
would have to
thing.
give it a deep thought. Really.
Okay, I'll say why he said it.
Yeah, and
I believe that every painter should make three-dimensional things. That it is a way to get cellular memory, felt memory of form into your head and into your body that will then come out when you go to work on a flat surface. You have a built-in, personalized understanding of what form is and what kind of form you're interested in and how you would build that, and I mean build like flat, on a two-dimensional surface. So like, that's what I was hoping you were going to say that.
yes. Yes, I might have said it.
But does it make sense or no? It might not make sense to him. But
it probably made sense at that time.
Yeah.
But now, I don't know if it makes sense now. But I think the reason for this is the longer I live, and the more I paint, the more confused I get. What I do.
You think?
And
I don't think so.
That's really, I don't enjoy it, but that's a fact, because I have all those questions and things that were clear to me when I was 20.
Thank God they're not clear to you now.
They're not clear at all. No.
I'm very happy that the things that were clear to me at 20 are not. Yeah. Okay, so you also work on paintings for a really long time?
Yes.
Oh, how do you determine if it's done, or are they ever done?
No, yeah, I have a mantra for this. And I always mentioned that I would say, for me, a painting is never done.
So if you go to a collector's house and see it, do you take your paints with you?
Yes.
No, seriously.
Yes, I would like to repaint my all my paintings, yes. And I do repaint. Actually, at this moment, I feel I'm painting about 5 old paintings, some of them who were done 20, 30 years ago. I repaint them because I said I think I could improve upon them from the way I see it now. So for me, the painting is, when it is not really just a joke, but
Is it?
I would say for me, the painting is never really finished because you changed and the painting changes along with you. And
God.
if you look at it, you want to repaint it.
I'm thinking if I didn't destroy those paintings, that I'd have a lot of paintings to paint over. I wouldn't want that job.
No.
That's a bit, well, there's a person I know, Philip Morseberger, who used to teach at CCAC, and when it had a C. And he did the same thing. He would be working on things forever, and he would paint on his paintings. I think he took his paints with him when he went to dinner at collectors' houses, because he would rework them. I guess, yeah, and Susan Rothenberg says, a painting's finished when it doesn't itch anymore. I'm more of that school. And when I finish a painting, it's not calling me anymore. I'm done. And if I don't like it, then I either destroy it or I keep painting on it until it becomes the painting that I want it to be.
I think, I agree with you.
But for you, it takes
100,
longer, basically.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think it was about 2-3 years ago, and I had a collection of all their work. And I said, there are some paintings that I really would like to repaint, and I could. And there are, at the same time, I had 40 other paintings, and what I did, I destroyed them.
The 40?
With glee, with pleasure.
Yeah.
And it is such a pleasure to take a knife and to cut it across your canvas.
Cut it in a lot of different little pieces because somebody will find it in your garbage and sell it on eBay.
No. I destroy them pretty well, and then you step on a stretcher bar and it cracks and you break it. And it was, I would say, it was one of those events when I was closer to happiness than I ever been.
So you start a painting, but do you, when you're painting, adding or painting over an old painting, do you cover it over and start all over, or are you selectively fixing or adding, or you realize it needs something and it's specific, you're working in a specific area, or are you just totally, does that painting, any addition to a painting, even from time to time, like you have at night it's one way, in the morning you come in and you do something else, that totally changes the painting, transforms it.
I think that's a very incisive.
Any mark changes the painting.
That's a very deep question.
Yeah.
And yes, how to explain it? How I do it? Yes, I usually I take it away and I add to something. I scrape it away. I take things, put things in. Mostly I take things off. Usually it's by taking things out. And it's by nature. and then you work on it, and then it's the same stroke. You put it on, and then you take it off, and come tomorrow or the day after, you put it back again. And so by very nature, I would say there are two kinds of painters. There is a romantic painter who paints and with gusto, and the painting is done and the work is beautiful. And I am by nature what you would call an apple polisher. You know, you have an apple, you can polish it, and then there is a piece probably that doesn't shine quite so well, you can polish it some more. And I think these days, in this romantic age that we are living in a sort of that sort of painting isn't being held in very high esteem. But
the apple polishing?
Yeah, the apple polish.
That's because no one has any time to polish the apple. They're busy paying off their student loans, and they only have a kitchen table to work at. So they don't recognize that it takes time to make a painting, and they want to make it too quickly.
Yes.
And they have a lot of things on their minds. Once they realize that it's a lifetime and that they have to start that lifetime by putting time in. It's a kind of prison, but it's a gorgeous prison.
Yeah.
They will.
Yeah.
They'll either keep doing it or they won't.
Absolutely.
So, do you ever leave a painting in a state where you don't like it? I mean, when you finish your painting session, if you don't like it, can you walk away at that moment? Or do you have to, when you go to bed, it has to be fine at that moment. You may change your mind the next day, but that painting is fine once you walk away from it for the day. Do you know what I mean?
I just put it away somewhere, someplace, and then I think probably my dealer Peter Mendenhall said probably best, and he usually looks at painting. Well, he asks.
He decides when it's done.
Yeah. Well, when is it going to be done? And I said, I don't know. So, actually, I hear a slight frustration in his voice. I might have. And so I just put it away. And sometimes I put it away, and it stays that way for years. I have several paintings that are probably I've done something, and I don't know how to proceed further. Right. And it's not that I don't know that I've lost interest. And with painting, with probably it is your one's personal reward. It is that the reward and the beauty for yourself. It is that it suddenly works out and everything clicks and it's there, and you can sleep very well at night. But sometimes I worked for weeks and weeks, and it really affects my sleep. Really, that I said, I put in all of this work and nothing has become of it.
See, I can't go, if I have a painting that I have a problem on and I can't go to bed leaving it like it's a problem, I'll put an X through it just to claim it.
Yes.
Just to keep it from, I think of it, if you leave a painting in a place where you don't like it, it's like a closet full of hangers. There'll be more in the morning. Yeah. It'll just be worse. So I have to I tell the painting what it's going to do. It won't tell me entirely. It's just, anyhow. So I was just curious if you have that kind of wacky thinking. No.
Yes, to some degree. To some degree, it's true. Yes.
Okay, now I have okay, what, he uses a red. Is your red a red gesso, or is it a red oil paint layer after you prime the canvas?
Well, there is no good explanation, but my explanation it is, I sort of painted red, and it's a very strong color, and it's a warm color.
That's what I wanted to know. Was it a warm red?
And if you paint over it, especially if you paint over it some blue or some green, and it sort of modifies it. It comes through.
Yeah,
and the painting is probably, like, especially if you paint in oils, not in acrylics, in times they get kind of a transparent. The color gets transparent, and the color underneath it bleeds.
Will come through.
It comes to the surface and it bleeds through. So that's the reason is that it makes the entire painting a little warmer, and I like warmer painting.
But the colors that your surface palette, let's call it that, or the palette, the colors that are on the finished painting are almost a little cool, like compared. Well, I think they're sort of a cool palette.
Yes.
Overall, but the red is under. What? He's going to explain to you what happens with the colors when you, because when you put you could do black. They also make gessos. I think it's better to do a color in the paint that you're using rather than a gesso. But they make a black gesso. They make a red gesso. You can have custom gessos made. You can make a blue gesso. But anytime you underpaint, or you could use a yellow, or you could use browns, I mean, you could just really, it affects the top layers in a really amazing way.
Yes.
And it causes, black is a great example, only because when you go put a color on top of a black, it really hovers on top of that. It's almost like painting on velvet, but not, because it's paint. And you'll cover it over, and it ends. But it also, on a dark ground, it will suck in a little more in a different way than on a red. A red will float out a little more. Will have more of a hover. I don't know how to explain it, but a hover capacity, where it's like the color just gets more vibrant. It jacks up the color in a really amazing way. So all you painters out there, try that. Because white, what happens with white is you have to build up the color in a way. It's to get that luminosity, to get that hovering aspect.
Yeah.
And you get more light quality by layering in this way, either individually onto certain parts of the painting, or by starting out with one color first.
Yes.
It's quite fabulous.
Yeah, so we are in complete.
We agree.
We are in complete agreement on.
But what pigment is it? I wondered whether it was a cool or a warm red. But do you know what red it is?
Yes. Well.
Or are they all different?
Yeah. Well, the object, I would say, it's the painting may look cool, but it actually isn't. It isn't as cool as it is. Like what we see. It isn't what it seems to be, and even in the cooler paintings, I think they are this warm undertone, and you cannot avoid it. But I don't know, it's really such a personal thing. You can paint on a white canvas. Also, a white canvas, it really frightens me. Very frightening. Yeah.
Huh.
And so I don't know, as far back as I can remember, even when I was 20 years old, I underpainted with something easily. Either it was yellow or brownish, or to give it a size, but to stay away from that
white?
Awful white color. Yeah, I would say pure neutral white color, wouldn't you say it's awful?
No, I actually I like a blank canvas. I like the newness of it. But I mess it up right away. I'll do grocery lists on it.
Yes.
Whatever. I'll clean my brushes on it. I don't treat it like it's something special.
Yes.
And like paper, if I'm going to draw on it, it can be walked on by the dogs.
Yes.
It's like, it's basically building up a layer in a similar way, but like more messy.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Finally. And the question is, what is generally asked, what's your favorite color?
I don't have a favorite color. I like them all. I used to hate brown. I thought brown was too much of a shit color. And now I love it. It's like raw umber is so fabulous. But I think all color is fabulous. And I think that, although right now I'm doing a whole bunch of black and white things, because black and white's really also wonderful. I like them all. There's no color that's better than another, to me. And you?
No.
Yeah.
No. I say the same thing, but the person who asks doesn't believe it. He said
really?
Yes.
Who is that person?
Well, I would say most persons that I meet, that I say there should be one color that you find. And it's probably really true, like in that there are certain colors that are closer to you, and especially if you go into the art market, what you would call, and it, of course, art market has nothing to do with painting. But in art market, it is very important what the color is.
Yeah, but do you care about that?
Pardon me?
Do you care about that, though? No.
Well, I experienced that, yeah, and I would say that people I meet most of the time, and I've talked to, there's one color that's really being, I would say, disregarded, and I would say the one really hates the color green. It's the color green.
Hates the color green?
Yeah, it's a color green, which, and I now in the process doing green paintings. I wanted to do, and let me tell you, for a painter, green is a very difficult color.
Yeah.
For everyone, and for the reason that it doesn't match with anything else. So,
especially Thalos.
Yeah. and if you are, let's say, an interior designer or decorator, he would definitely tell you that he would not recommend his client to buy a green painting.
Really?
Because it does not match with any type of a furniture.
I don't know, Martha Stewart had a whole line of greens that were this sort of aqua beautiful green. It's a dirtied out green. I think that person's wrong. You're talking to the wrong person.
Well, that's true. A green should stay by itself. Like we said, green is a color that doesn't match with any other color very well. But of course, not like those colors that are really liked by most people. And when there's one color that is really appreciated universally, and that's blue. Some sort of a yellow-orange.
Oh yeah, because it's happy.
Because it sort of matches with everything.
See, well, it does. Yellow does go with a lot, but.
Yeah, no, you have to object me on that point. Yes.
When I was a child, I used black all the time. I mean, like a little kid. And because I think black is an amazing, amazing color. And I wanted my room painted black, which my parents refused to do. But as an adult, I painted one. And it's a gorgeous color for a room. It really is. Because you put things on the wall, they look great. Black is fabulous.
Well, I would say, exactly, I would say black is the most fabulous color. If you are considered the colorist, the best color paintings are in black. And how to handle
black
your blacks, and it's not easy because there is a relationship with the black and the white or gray around it, and if it doesn't work well, it doesn't work, and if it works, all of a sudden black becomes color like red or orange or blue or whatever it is. So that's a marvelous, that's a reward for a painter to discover it and to enjoy it, I think, mostly.
And if you layer colors under that black, you think black is going to cover over. If you layer colors under it, like an ultramarine blue under it or something, depending on whether it's a Mars black or a ivory black or bone black or something, it will change that black and make it deeper. And also if you layer by intensity, so many, many, many coats of the same color will also make colors zingy, like
that's right.
Really,
That's right.
Yeah, that's a little too much shop
because
talk.
Black contains. I always so.
Okay, so now we've talked. So let me see. This is another thing you said. Are you sorry you talked to anyone? This was in the catalog. You've said that true artists learn from other painters. Amateurs learn from nature. And also that Diebenkorn still, I mean, from your observation of looking at his work, still has things to say to you, that he still kind of teaches you to this day, right?
Yes,
yeah.
yes. I am, I would say, very strong about this thing about black, I would say, about being this color, And I would say that probably what an amateur painter, what he does, he goes out into the nature, and then he starts painting. And then, I observed certain things that, probably an amateur painter, it's like the painting of a child. And then you realize that all over the world, and certain very basic amateur paintings, they look the same. Mm-hmm. Whether they are produced in the United States or in Europe or even in the Orient. And a painter really doesn't do that. He has to look at other painters, how he did it. Like, for example, if you want to paint a tree. Now, a tree is a very difficult thing to paint. Mm-hmm. Everyone who paints will realize. I myself, I'm not a very good tree painter of trees, so I try to avoid it like the devil. But then when you want to, you have to go to ask how other people have handled it. Mm-hmm. How it does it. And so this way we learn from other painters.
Absolutely.
A painter learns from other painters, and then what they said is really a continuity over the centuries in painting. There is
every painting is related to every other painting.
There's a respective of friendship between the painters that painted 500 years ago that paints now.
Yeah.
And you learn from him how he handled the tree, and how he handled the shadow, or how he handled a certain object. What did he do with it?
And then do you think you actually figure out exactly how that painter did those things, or is it that you think you figured it out and you've solved a kind of riddle for yourself or a problem for yourself, and so you take that to the studio, but you really haven't painted it like that painter? Do you know what I mean? Because here's the like students have asked me how to do, well, some trompe-l'oeil stuff, and I've always said to them, I'm not going to tell you, because I'd rather you figure it out yourself, like I did. And so I send them to go look at like Pito, or I'm blanking out the other people I should mention, but anyhow, people who've worked in trompe-l'oeil. And because I think that if an artist truly looks really carefully at something, that they will then paint it the way they would. They're not using this, they're not doing the same methodology as the painter that they looked at, because they're bringing this information into their head and kind of figuring, well, what did that person do? Did they do this? Did they do that? And then they take that information to the studio or to the easel and they start working. But then it becomes theirs because it's sort of gone through their thought process, and they weren't there with the painter whose painting they were looking at, watching them do it, so they can't really copy how they did it. So then it becomes theirs instead of being told how to do it, and then it's never theirs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you probably want to simplify it, or whatever. Yeah, but you probably look at a painter and then you feel cold about the rest of the painting, but then you see how he painted a piece of a glass.
Yeah.
And then you try to analyze, why does it shine? And then you sort of use it and incorporate it in your own work. Like I always repeat, like a painter is like a scavenger. And we take and we steal wherever we can. And for ourselves. And for that reason, I think I always, as I once said, that famous painter Smith used to say that no painting there is no painting in the world that doesn't look like somebody else's painting in some way.
No, they're all related.
And you cannot avoid it. And usually I think the reviewers so hard that they do a great discredit to the people who read it. Like they always compare it, what you do, compare to this painter and to compare to that painter and that painter. But that's true. Yeah, you take it from all of them, whatever suits you, and be it a painting, it could be a photograph, it could be an ad, it could be somebody throws a piece of paper on the floor and you see a relationship. And you take it what you can get.
Right.
And
or as Bill Murray says, alert and available.
Yeah, it's available. Yeah, it is available. Yeah. And I, from what I understand, that what I read, that painter like Diebenholt, whom I admire most, apparently he felt the same way, and
yeah.
And
Well, Squeak and Raimonds, I'm wondering if there might be some questions for you from our audience, if we want to.
Well, I would say a commentary, it's this green color. It always bothers me, and psychologically I wonder why. And then I think probably a week ago, I came up with an answer. And the answer is this, that I would say historically and in literature, the color of poison is always green.
Or acid yellow.
Yeah, the color of poison is green. Then you have mold on your bread, or probably on your cheese, and it's green. So I feel it has something to do with it. So much for amateur psychology, I would say.
Fine.
So if we do have any questions in our audience, I have a microphone and I will come to you. And just so you're aware, we are filming today's program, so you will be heard. Was there a question down here? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you for the conversation. And I have a question regarding California artists. And
Yes.
we live in a time where California has been blessed, so to speak, and a lot of artists don't have to create art out of rebellion or, so we say, from a lot of pressure, like let's say censorship. Right now in China, there's an article this morning in The Guardian talking about how Weiwei, one of the most famous artists, he talks about how he has to create art from censorship, like rebellion. So California doesn't have that much. Until recently, we have a lot of problem with, let's say, the prison industry. There's an artist in LA talks about how he paint only prison scenes and all that stuff. So my question is about how in California artists have the chance to create beauty from colors. And should artists be using color for these more pressing arts, like from censorship? Like in the Middle Age, they had a lot of censorship, and that created a lot of beautiful art from that. But it's all laced in the symbolism or anagram. So in California, what should artists do?
Would you answer that question?
Oh, no, that's for you. I'm not going there. I think that's a question for Raymond.
Yes.
I don't think he's going to answer it.
We have another.
It's a great question, but it's so complex.
It's so
that
hard.
I can,
Maybe just tell
I
the
would have to
truth.
think about it when I go home and.
You'll get back to us.
Well, I have an answer. So, because this interests me on some level, but I can't get, it's like I'm only going to, get to the edge of it. But I find it really upsetting that a lot of things are going on in our country that weren't going on. And that there's a lot of things that seem to be untrue getting said, so that nobody knows what's real and what's not real. So my answer was to make a whole bunch of paintings that said liar on them with various images. And, that just makes me feel better. I'm not sure it does anything. But I think artists have to do what they think they need to do. And not everybody, and I don't think every artist needs to be a political artist, I think Ai Weiwei's whole way of working is to call into question how China operates with their artists. And from school, how they were taught in school, to when they become, once China opened up and they could send work or go to the West. So, but it's very complicated. I don't think it's easy.
Yeah, well, I would say that if you do that and that kind of work and where politics come in, or, I call it an illustration. I could say there's art and there's illustration, and because it has a certain story to tell, and it could not be considered really art per se. Like I said, whatever it is, either on that canvas or on that piece of paper, it doesn't carry itself, it carries a message. And my personal opinion is that messages could be best expressed in writing, and very often, but not always.
So write on your canvases.
We have another question down here to your right.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. Getting the speaker right in my ear. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's like hearing yourself.
Yes. There's so many questions that I could ask you. I could just pick your brain about colors and painting and everything. Just to relate back to what he was saying, sometimes I guess I feel guilty because I focus more on the internal struggle with myself as opposed to society as a whole. And I feel like I'm failing the art world or people, but I can't help it. I have to look at my own demons before I look at anything else. But writing is a good medium for that. I agree with you. My question, I apologize, is do you mix your own colors, or do you buy them from a store? What brand do you use? Like what? I would assume you probably mix your own colors and use a lot of extra pigment.
You mean grind them?
Yeah.
Do you grind them?
If you don't, that's okay. We won't judge.
Oh, you mean
Is that what you mean? Like that he starts with, he dries dry pigment and linseed oil and grinds it with a mullet.
Yeah, well, yes, we all blend, yeah. Either we use pure as they come, or we blend, or we do whatever seems to work, and most of it doesn't work. But
do you buy a certain kind of paints?
I buy the cheapest paint possible. And there is really a good economic reason. The reason is this, is that most of the paint ends up in the garbage can anyway. So I would not buy, let's say, a small tube of Winsor Newton for, let's say, red for $40.
No, but you can buy bigger tubes, they're cheaper, and
yeah,
other manufacturers, or jars.
There are really those expensive paints, Winsor Newtons, that don't come in sort of big tubes. Like
Right.
they have, Winsor Newton has several levels of, really probably the most concise, the most saturated ones come in small tubes. And
Depends on how they grind it.
yeah, and
I think.
I've really tried to explore that, and I just couldn't afford it if I squeeze out one tube and probably 4/5 of it goes into the garbage can, and I could use. So I use the cheapest. I always look for the cheapest paint.
See, I think that student grade paints are shit, and I think that they're not as pigment loaded, so that you're spending more money to use them, and so I always encourage people to buy what they can afford, what the best colors they think, that they like, and also every manufacturer, like if you get a whole bunch of ultramarine blue, and you buy them all different manufacturers, each blue is going to be different. And in part because of the oil they use, whether it's safflower or linseed or something else, walnut oil, or because of how much pigment they will grind into it and how fine they grind it and how coarse they grind it. All these things matter. And where they get the pigment, and whether it's a cool color, like ultramarine is like a warm blue. A phthalo is like a cool blue. All cool colors are more translucent and have a tendency to work really great for transparencies and stuff. You can make transparencies out of opaque colors, but you have to spread them thin with a medium and stuff. Anyhow, it's just every manufacturer does it differently. So you can experiment and fool around. And Williamsburg makes a good paint. If you're an acrylic painter, the best acrylic is Lascaux. It's really fabulous, and they make tons of mediums. But I don't think anybody should use acrylic because it doesn't have the luminosity that oils have. It's not natural enough, you know. It dries a little flatter. But if you have to, because you're allergic, go get some Lascaux. And
I think we have another question down here to your left.
Mr. Staprans, thank you for coming and talking to us today. It's an honor.
I would like to have more questions, and I'm sorry that I couldn't answer directly to a couple of them. But
well, hopefully this won't be a difficult question for you. I read that you use...
The questions have been so difficult. No, really, that I would have to go home and think about them.
Sorry.
And then to give an answer.
Well, I read...
You're setting her up, aren't you?
You're setting me up. I read that you use a lot of masking tape, and I would like to understand that process a little better and explain to me what you are trying to accomplish when in your process of painting you're masking pieces out. Are you doing it for finer lines, more definitive? Are you saving part of the canvas? What is your process regarding masking?
That's a good question. That was one of mine here. So let's hope he answers. So when you use masking, and you leave some masking tape in.
Yeah.
Are you worried about it archivally? No. Okay. Never mind. Okay. So she wants to know what your methodology is.
Could you simplify the question?
I think she's asking how you use masking tape when you paint.
I'm actually trying to understand the purpose. Are you trying to get very straight lines when you mask, or are you trying to preserve part of your canvas for some
straight line?
Because
yes.
I heard you use a lot of masking tape. Is that correct?
Miles and miles of masking tape.
Explain your process then to me, if that's not too...
For the thing it's very interesting. With the hand you can make a very straight line, but a line done with masking tape, it's entirely different in character.
That's right.
The character changes. So you add some tool to your, I would say, your bag of tools, and as it happens, I use a lot of them, I don't know if I answered your question that way.
I read the catalog, so. So one of the things that's described in the catalog is when you want to block something off because you're looking to see if you want to get rid of it or if you want to change it in some way, that you will cover over the whole area, a large area with masking tape, not just to preserve it, but to see what it's like when it's missing, when it's absent.
I would say sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
it all depends, and sometimes I paint it out, sometimes I rub it out with a rag, sometimes I use my hand and just. So there is no certain procedure how you do it. Let's say you learn it and you do it as you go along, and you experiment all the time. And
I think we have time for one last question. So I saw this hand first, right in the center. Can you pass this down, please?
yes.
First of all, I want to say thank you for being here. It's an honor to be in the same room with you. So I've seen, well-deserved applause.
Well,
So I've seen your collection here at least 5 times. And like Squeak had said, or not you, the moderator, said that each time you view the collection, you see something different. And what stood out for me was I was noticing how your paintings had emphasis on the foreground, like the lemons or the box or the table. But I noticed that through the use of color, the background was just as important as the foreground. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to know if that was intentional, if that is something in your process that you give importance to both the foreground and the background, or is that just a happy accident that would happen? Thank you.
To say, I would have to say that most good things
Our intention.
I think I've been talking. But I would really answer that question. That most good things that happen to her, they are mostly happy accidents. They just happen. Like you do one thing and then you see something else. And then you see, doesn't that look interesting? Doesn't that look nice? Yeah, I would say most good things, I would say they're all, it's a collection of many happy accidents. And at least one for me that is, because you can plan in advance and you can plan in detail, and once you start working, then you would say that the idea, what you have in the mind, usually does not work. And then you paint and you try this and you try that, and you wait for the happy accident to happen. And sometimes it does, and then you're happy and you can sleep at night. And, no, it's really true.
Well, I feel like there's a bit of a life lesson in what you just explained, Raimonds, and I think that might be a good place to close for today. I want to give my heartfelt thanks to Sweet Carnwath for interviewing you and for being in conversation.
Well, thank you.
And I thank you, Raymond Staprans, for being with us today. We're truly honored to have you here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the questions.
Okay, you get to flee
Thank you
now.
all for coming. Have a great afternoon.
And